James Rapien, we have missed seeing him. His handsome face, a belated Merry Christmas. How was everything? I assume Santa Claus was at your house, right? Christmas Eve, Christmas morning?
Yeah. Oh, Santa was here. Cookies were had. It was a great time, no doubt about it. Merry Christmas to you too.
Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. It's great to see you. Sports Illustrated, allbengals.com, Locked On Bengals podcast at James Rapien on X. All right, let's get to the two big questions. It looks like Cam Taylor-Britt for sure is playing, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Number two, what about Jamar Chase?
I think he's got a good shot. I do. I watched him pretty closely on the rehab field yesterday, and he was looking as explosive and fast and getting in and out of his breaks with the quickness and speed that you want to see. And so I think it'll be about soreness today, moving that shoulder, lifting it above his head, reaching for passes, catching passes, of course. But how does he feel? And if he can be even limited today, and I'm not sure he necessarily needs to practice at all to play, to be quite honest. But even if he's limited today, I would think that that's a really good sign for him to play. So I think he's trending in the right direction. I think there's certainly a shot. And part of it is pretty simple. If you lose, you might not need to bring him back for week 18 anyways. Mm-hmm. So if he can go this week, you want him to be able to go.
You know, he's a tough guy. And James, look, at the end of the day, every guy that plays in the National Football League, okay, whether they play good or bad, they are all tough guys. Now, there's different guys as far as pain tolerance and what they can play with and can't play with. That's the story of life with different people. But, the thing about this guy is and I used to hear the same things when I was doing NFL games about Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, you got all the flash and you got all the sex appeal and the whole 9 yards. But at the end of the day, it seems to me like Chase is very much like Beckham in this regard. They both love to practice. They both constantly want to get better. And they are both really tough guys.
I would agree with that description of Chase. I think there's less drama as well.
I didn't mean from that standpoint. I just meant as far as their commitment to being great players. And clearly Beckham has had injuries where he can't even get on the field. But I used to hear that about him all the time, that even when he had it rolling with the Giants, that he was always into practice, really tough and cared and always wanted to get better. I sense the same things with Chase.
I totally agree. And I think it's not just physically tough. He's mentally tough, extremely tough. And that's why I give him a good shot to play this week, why I think he is one of the premier receivers in the game, and why having him could be the difference between beating the Chiefs and losing by 20. I think he's as valuable of a receiver as there is in the NFL, outside of maybe Tyreek Hill because of the way the Dolphins are built around his speed. But from a toughness standpoint, from a usage standpoint, what they ask him to do, down in and down out, versatility, there's no one quite like Chase. And they obviously rely on Jamar to do so much. So, yeah, I think he's crucial to their chances this Sunday in Kansas City if he can play.
When you look at the sort of mentality of the Bengals, and I think this is an area where Zach Taylor's done an excellent job. We talk about, use words like culture and environment and everybody being all in. You don't see a lot of drama with this team, players bad-mouthing the coach, questioning this or that, whatever it might be. But last week was ugly. And you clearly have to turn the page because this is a huge game, maybe a season-saving game. Just from the last couple of days at practice, now last number of days of practice, even around a holiday. Do you feel like this group is beyond last week and they're ready to go this week? Will be ready to go this week?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think it certainly helps when you have Christmas right afterwards. It's not like they played on Monday and then had a quick turnaround. You had a few days to process it, to absorb what they did or didn't do in the standings and what everybody else did or didn't do. And the reality for the Bengals, it's pretty simple. Win these next two. You win them, you're probably going to be in. And it obviously starts against Kansas City, but that's kind of a freeing mindset. You know what you have to do. You don't have to really scoreboard watch much. And you're playing, I don't want to say with house money, but Tom, the pressure's on the Chiefs this Sunday.
Yeah.
The pressure isn't on the Bengals. The Chiefs are the ones that have fumbled the 1 seed, and the playoffs aren't going to go through Arrowhead again, and are legitimately, they've been bad on offense, and they have one of the best defenses in the league, and you would expect Patrick Mahomes and that offense to figure it out. So will that be this week? We'll see. But from a Bengals perspective, I think they look at it as, okay, we know what we have to do. They don't really feel the pressure going into this game. It's more of a freedom of, let's just find a way to win. And if we do, we'll make the postseason again. And so I do. I think it's almost a house money approach, so to speak, given where they're at in the standings and what they have to do to get to the postseason.
You know, I'm trying to think my way through this question as I'm about to ask it, so bear with me here just for 1 second. What is a greater challenge, do you think, for the Bengals? And you can reflect back on the recent encounters with Kansas City. But is a greater challenge to the Bengals a really good Kansas City offense and not such a great defense, as we've seen in the past, or a sputtering Kansas City offense versus a great or very, very good Kansas City defense? You know where I'm going with that question? Does that make any sense?
I do. And the answer is the offense and how they've been constructed in the past, because you could go there. And in fact, I think they did go there. Maybe it was in 2018 on Sunday Night Football. It was a primetime game, and they just get their doors blown off. You look up and they're down 21-0, and it was just ugly. And the Bengals had gotten off to a good start that year. And obviously that was the Marvin Lewis era. But it was like the start of this Patrick Mahomes run. And that's sort of the difference, is I think that when you have a high-powered offense to that level, you can overcome a defense and make a defense look much better because you're up 21-0, because you get off to such a quick start. With this Kansas City team, the defense played great the other day. It's not like Aiden O'Connell was lighting them up. They just didn't have 2 pick sixes or 2 huge turnovers for touchdowns. And the Chiefs' offense obviously faltered. So I just think it's easier to hide your flaws with an explosive offense in today's NFL. But this Chiefs team, they're still dangerous. They're still a contender. I'm not going to dismiss them. And I do wonder if this is the week, especially without DJ Reader, if they look at the interior of their offensive line and say, that's our strength. Whether it's Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, obviously Joe Tooney, let's run it between the tackles. Some of that's probably dependent on Isaiah Pacheco. But maybe you take some off of Patrick Mahomes' plate, not because he can't handle it, but because the weapons around him clearly haven't performed to the level that we expected.
There just seems to be, and we talked about it for different reasons with the Steelers and everything that was going on with Pickens and Tomlin and their season and the quarterback and the offense, blah, blah, blah. Similarly, there just seems to be, I will use the word drama, because when you start mixing in, and I've heard some people saying, I agree with them, Taylor Swift doesn't have anything to do with anything about how well with the Chiefs. But that's an element that's part of it one way or the other, if nothing else for just, what you talk about. There just seems to be drama. Kelsey's throwing helmets on his sidelines. Mahomes, you can read his lips about getting the freaking play called. Mahomes, whether he was yelling or trying to inspire his offensive line on a sideline. These are very real pictures of frustration and things that have not, hampered this Kansas City team during the Mahomes era. It just doesn't seem to be – there's something missing. You agree with that? I don't know what it is, but there's something missing.
I do agree. I think, and Bill Simmons said this, I would love to have taken the credit, but Bill Simmons said it kind of feels like the 2019 Patriots, that final year with Brady, where they lose to the Titans at home in the playoffs. And it looked like the same guys. You still had Edelman. There was no Gronk, but you still had Brady. You still had Belichick. And it didn't feel right. And they kind of faltered at the end of the year, and then they get knocked out early in the playoffs in the first round. So I think that's the comparison. But to your Pickens comparison, because I've been pretty critical of the Bengals, they had a chance to completely send that guy to the moon. Everyone was talking about in Pittsburgh, trading him, will he last the season, all of those things. And the second play of the game, he has an 86-yard touchdown. And just like that, everything is good. Everything's good again.
No doubt about it.
You can't do that this week. If you're the Bengals, you need to think, all right, we need to make Patrick Mahomes slam his helmet. We need to make sure that Travis Kelce is really frustrated and thinking about his celebrity girlfriend up there being embarrassed that she's here at New Year's Eve watching him lose. And so you need to get off to a good start. You can't let them off the hook. If they take their first possession, 10 plays, 75 yards, and score a touchdown, well, then it's business as usual, and it's really hard to overcome that. There's pressure on the Chiefs. You want to keep that pressure building and adding in front of a crowd that is going to be probably a bit anxious, especially if they get off to a slow start.
All right, everybody has their thoughts about what could be the difference in the game, but from a strictly a Bengal standpoint, and you just mentioned that without a doubt, that's a key. You can't let them get off and rolling like the Steelers did last week, and here we go, and now you're behind, and you don't run the ball, whatever it may be. But if you looked at a couple of areas where you say, this is something you alluded to Pacheco. We don't know what really his status as far as being at full strength is concerned. But if you look at a couple of things in this game and you say, that really is something we need to watch, what would they be?
I think first thing is you don't want Kelce, who, man, oh man, has continued to defy age. I think it's funny that Taylor Swift blaming when he's 34 years old and Kelce's been in the league for a long, long time and playing at such a high level. You don't want him to get going. But I think their defense concerns me a lot in this pass rush that they have. It's not just Chris Jones. It's all of the above. And so can you operate in that environment? Jake Browning talked about how loud it is, and after a while, loud is just loud and it doesn't matter. No one can hear anyway, so you just have to go on the silent count. How they handle that, and if they can get going on offense against a really good defense. I mean, their defense is better than the Bengals defense, which people might not want to hear, but they have been consistently throughout the year. And I think they're the best unit in this game. So can you take it to that Chiefs defense and be able to be the aggressor at times? I think having Jamar obviously is huge, but it's going to fall on Jake. You're going to need good Jake, fourth quarter Minnesota Jake, or Indianapolis Colts Jake, whatever you want to say, when we've seen him play at his highest level. If he does that, I think they do have a chance. But that defense is – I don't want people to sleep on it. This is not your normal Kansas City Chiefs defense.
Yeah. They have played very, very, very well. Okay, prediction. Bengals go in there and win the game?
Ooh, I haven't thought about a prediction yet.
Okay.
It was weird with the holiday. It feels like a short week, even though it's a long week for the Bengals. As of now, I'm leaning Chiefs. I think that this is, you're a desperate team. You want to clinch the division. You're at home, and you're playing a team that doesn't have Joe Burrow. And yet there is something that's very dangerous about a team that has nothing to lose. And let's be honest here. If the Bengals lose to the Chiefs, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised. And so I would put it in the nothing to lose category, even though they might not phrase it that way. And so could this be the week Zach Taylor hits a trick play and it actually works? I think it might.
Please don't say that.
I think it might.
Please don't say that.
I think it might. So I'm not ruling it out. I certainly think they have a good shot to win, but it's a tough place to play. They could go play well and still lose in a close game.
All right, I want to ask you, before we let you go, because you're really tuned in to the rest of the league in the NFL. I was shocked, and maybe I shouldn't be, but I am just shocked of this Russell Wilson thing. We gave through some of the numbers where, if he doesn't pass a physical, in March, that they got to hand him a check for $37 million. He's going to be owed, if you cut him, close to $90 million. It's a first year of that 5-year, $242 million deal. I mean, they haven't scored like you want a team to score. Sean Payton's an offensive guy. He's been frustrated with the red zone. He's been frustrated with the points. He's been frustrated with third down. But it's not like Wilson has been awful. Do you think at the end of the day that Wilson is done in Denver?
No doubt. And the moment they hired Sean Payton, the clock was ticking on Russell Wilson. And what he had to do was prove that he's still a franchise guy, that he's still worth that contract, that he's someone that they can build around still. and not a shell of himself. And I agree. I think he's flashed some this year. I also think that the writing's on the wall that he isn't the guy that's going to get them to a division championship, let alone a Super Bowl title. And it's tough. But when they hired Sean Payton, I think those conversations were had prior about, all right, this is a realistic scenario. I'm not going to baby Russell Wilson. I'm not going to treat him any different. And he's going to have to prove that he's my quarterback. And I think, obviously, that new ownership group in Denver, they have a lot of money to toss around. And so I think they agreed to that ahead of time. And I get it. I do get it. I think it's interesting. Where does he end up? Is he a starter somewhere else? Because there were some good signs this year, but it's a business, and everyone knows it. And these are one of these. I don't even want to say cold-hearted things because he's getting a lot of money, but it does stink in a way because I do think Russell Wilson's been a good teammate at least this year.
Yeah, and you know, it leads me to my final thought, because isn't it amazing, and this is really the story in life, it doesn't matter what you do for a living, but we're talking about football and about quarterbacks and these long-term hundreds of millions of dollars deal and how quickly it can turn and saddle a franchise. I mean, everybody around here wanted to give Burrow the money. He's earned it. He deserves it. Everybody's looking forward to his future. Lamar Jackson, same thing. Herbert, same thing. Hurts, same thing. All these guys. But, man, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, James. We're talking about Russell Wilson, just like we're talking now about Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott. You know, all these guys. It wasn't that long ago where he was among the elite of the elite of the elite.
Two things there. First one, that's why if you're the Bengals, if you're the Ravens, and obviously their window appears to be wide open, you have to have the urgency year in and year out because you just don't know. You don't know what injuries are going to happen. You don't know how seasons are going to go. And so it's got to be foot on the gas the entire time to find ways to put pieces around your quarterback to make sure that you can not only contend for a Super Bowl, but in your minds be the best roster. And that's really, really hard to do because every team's trying to do it. And so I think there has to be urgency always, including this offseason, which obviously there's a lot of question marks with the Bengals. But as far as an NFL picture, and obviously there's probably some Ohio State fans that are watching, Justin Fields. The answer is obvious in Chicago. You trade him. You do not pay him. You're going to have probably the number one pick unless Carolina, I think, wins out. Then there's a chance, and I don't think they'll do that. But you can't saddle yourself to just an okay quarterback that may be good. That's not at these numbers. It's just you cannot do it. You have to kind of reset, and whether it's resetting the entire franchise or just bringing in a new quarterback, I would really hesitate to commit big money. The Daniel Jones contract, that's insane. I never would have done that if I was New York. There's another example. And I know it didn't work out this year, but even when it happened, it was like, that does not really make sense. And it's because the money is too great for mediocre. And so maybe some of these teams will move on rather than extending okay quarterbacks. They'll move on and try to find the next guy, which it's challenging to do because it could put your job on the line.
It is. And a lot of these guys who are GMs or presidents of football operations, whatever they might be, you know, their tail's on the line if all of a sudden you say, okay, because, you know, we were doing the drill the other day. You start comparing the numbers. You mentioned Fields. I mean, Fields' overall numbers, you can make an argument that they are better than Trevor Lawrence. But Fields gets killed, and I'm talking about the entire picture now. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about running the ball, throwing the ball, touchdown passes, and number of games played. I mean, you know, the Jaguars are going to have to make a decision on this guy, and everybody and his brother say, I'm sure they're going to say, give him the money. Hey, I don't know. The last thing I want to ask you is, and because you brought it up, and I wasn't going to ask you anything further and take up any more of your time, so thank you. But when you said about a team being all in, here's my question for you. Okay, if you've got these guys. I have a really hard time as a Bengals fan, and I am a Bengals fan. I try to be as objective as possible, but I am a Bengals fan, just like you. You grew up here in town. You root for them. You have to cover them, but at the end of the day, we root for them to win. And there's nothing wrong with saying that as a member of the quote-unquote media. We root for them to win. It's better for the town. It's better for all of us. But as a Bengal fan, I really wrestle with the fact that you're tens of millions of dollars under the salary cap. Now, there may be reasons beyond my understanding of the salary cap, but the bottom line is, I find it hard to accept that the Bengals truly were all in this year. And I use the name Jadeveon Clowney. Okay, now he's not the guy he used to be. He's not the player. I said when he hit the market, there is a guy, knowing the Bengals' weaknesses going into the season outside of Hendrickson, that their problem was pressuring the quarterback. You could have got that guy just like the Ravens got that guy on a nothing deal and brought him in here, yet you're sitting tens of millions of dollars under the salary cap. I say, as a Bengal fan, that's not going all in.
I get it. And I when you combine it, and I really like Myles Murphy. As a player, I think he's going to be good. But when you combine it with a first rounder that on paper isn't going to be a significant contributor right away, and you have these other holes, tight end, running back, that were holes for most of the season. Now, running back seems to solve itself a little bit here. Tanner Hudson has emerged as a tight end, so it might feel different today than it did earlier in the year. But think about that. Think about what it would have looked like had they been open to the right tight end, I will say, in round one. It's tough. And those are the type of things where I think it's tough for fans to swallow, because Jadeveon Clowney, you're right. He's an example of a guy that was just out there forever. And they have some glaring holes. They're going to have some more holes this offseason. And that's why, like with the T. Higgins conversation, the compensatory picks and all that stuff, like they shouldn't get another compensatory pick for any of their star players for quite some time, because they should be in the market for stars always. And they essentially traded Jesse Bates for Orlando Brown Jr. With T. Higgins, I don't think you can just play it out on the franchise tag. I think you either sign him, which would be preferable, because I think T is really, 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 really good. He'd be the number one receiver in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence, just to give you an example. And if you don't, then you tag him and you trade him. You try to get value, and then you got to aggressively address that either in the draft or free agency with someone that you think is plug and play, not let's develop him, because that's what Myles Murphy is. I love the ability and the athleticism, and I do think he's going to be a really good player, but he was 21 and he needed to work on his pass rush, and he has done that. He's passed Joseph Osai on the depth chart. Like, I think it's been a successful rookie year overall for Murphy, where my expectations were. But it's not like on draft night we said, oh, well, they just got that pass rusher that they're going to need in the AFC title game. I didn't view it that way then, and obviously it hasn't played out that way so far this year.
All right, James, we appreciate so much of your time and your expertise. All the best, my friend, and early Happy New Year and safe travels to Kansas City.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right, buddy. James Rapien, kind enough to join us.
Hey there. Thanks for watching our video. If you like our stuff, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to see more of our content, check out this video and check out this video.